Hello everyone. Today's lesson is about compounds involving polyatomic ions. These are special types of ionic compounds that have a special type of ion in them called polyatomic ions. The reference from your textbook is pages 202 to 205, and you'll be taking a look at those in a little bit. So just take a look at the three pictures that I've pasted into this slide, and they have something in common. They contain polyatomic ions. And they contain polyatomic ions that can be quite harmful to living things. The first picture, obviously, a hot dog, a nice yummy hot dog. Maybe you saw some people at the Blue Jays game yesterday eating them. Anyways, hot dogs contain a lot of preservatives, as you may know. And some of those preservatives are nitrites. Nitrites are a type of polyatomic ion that in our bodies react with other substances and get converted into some pretty harmful chemicals. Now, that's not to say you should never have a hot dog. I don't tell people that, but I think you should be aware of what you're eating and perhaps limit how much of these processed meats that you put into your body. Any of the processed meats, especially meats that have been smoked or cured, they will contain these nitrites. And nitrites have been linked to certain types of cancer. There's a really strong correlation. There's been studies for decades to show that people who ate a lot of processed meats had a higher incidence of cancers like colon cancer. And so, I think it's a good idea to just limit how much of these that you eat. The middle picture, Tide, you may be aware that a lot of these detergents contain an ion called phosphates. Some of them have sulfates and phosphates. The problem with phosphates is they get washed down the drain with our dirty water, and they end up in our sewer system. And sometimes they run off into lakes, rivers, streams, and they provide a source of fertilizer, of nutrition for algae in the water. And this can lead to an overgrowth of algae in the water, and that can be quite negative. So phosphates in the water are a problem when algae overgrows and blocks out sunlight and takes up all the good oxygen when it dies off. So phosphates can be really harmful to the environment. The third picture is fertilizer, lawn fertilizer, and it's much like the phosphates. It has nitrates in it. Now the hot dog had nitrites. Fertilizer has nitrates, and it also will run off your lawn into lakes, rivers, streams, and cause algae to overgrow, which can kill everything in that water system. So these are some common polyatomic ions that are in some really common things that we touch every day, and they have an impact on our health and on the health of ecosystems. So we'll move on now to looking at these ions and working with them. Here's the definition for polyatomic ions, and I would like you to copy this into a note. Polyatomic ions are ions made of more than one atom that act as a single charged particle. So really what they are is a group of atoms that are covalently bonded together. There's usually a central atom with atoms arranged around it, and there's covalent bonds between the atoms. They stay together as a group. You should treat them as being one thing, not a group of atoms. And this group of atoms has an overall charge, so it's actually an ion. So if you think about the word polyatomic, poly means many, atomic means atom. So this is an ion, a charged particle made of many atoms. Sometimes there's only two atoms in the polyatomic ion, or there may be many. The picture below is of a sulfate ion. This is a sulfur with 4 oxygens attached to it. It has a charge of 2-. So I'm just going to draw out what the formula would be for this. SO4, and it's an ion, and we show that charge with a 2- up as a superscript. And often when you're showing an ion, you will put square brackets. around the ion with the charge outside. Now, that's not a big deal for grade 10, but I know in grade 11 you'll be expected to draw them that way. So this is the sulfate ion. If you look on page 202 of your textbook, you'll see a list of some common polyatomic ions that you'll be able to refer to throughout this work. You do not need to memorize these ions. You'll always be provided them on any tests or quizzes or the final exam. Here's a table of polyatomic ions that I took from Google Images. Thank you, Google. And this shows you this shows you some of the common polyatomic ions. I want you to take a look at these and look for some patterns. Do you notice anything about these? Hopefully you can see them. Have you noticed that there aren't very many positive ions in this list? We've got a couple here at the top, the hydronium ion, dimercury, the ammonium ion, and all the rest are negative ions. Now, do you notice anything else about all these negative ions? Do you notice anything about their names? Hopefully you've noticed that most of these ions have an ending that's either ate or ite. 8 is a really common ending for polyatomic ions. A lot of the ones that we'll work with in this course will end with ate, A-T-E. One exception is the hydroxide ion right here. So hydroxide, it's the OH1 minus ion, and it ends in IDE. Don't be confused by that. It's not like oxide or sulfide or nitride. Those words represent the elements. This is a polyatomic ion with oxygen and hydrogen in it. And I would suggest that you just memorize this one because you're going to see it all the time and you don't want to be confused by its IDE ending. But it's the only one ending in IDE. You're going to want to look for words that end with ATE or ITE, and that's going to be a clue to you that what you're dealing with in that formula is a polyatomic ion. So this next screen is about how we name compounds involving polyatomic ions. So if you take a look at the one that I've drawn here, I have an Li, so that is one part of this compound. And then the second part of the compound is this NO3. So what I want you to be seeing when you look at this compound is that it's made up of the metal lithium, and then it has this other part, this NO3. I don't want you to look at NO3 as being a nitrogen with 3 oxygens or nitrogen with oxygen. This is the nitrate ion. It's a group of atoms, so that should trigger in your mind. You need to go look at a polyatomic table and find out what NO3 is called. And when you look at that table, you'll see that it's nitrate. So here's how we name it. It's really simple. You write the metal first, lithium, and then the polyatomic ion is nitrate. You don't have to change any endings. You don't have to do anything to these words. Just the metal as it is on the periodic table, and the nonmetal exactly as it looks on your table, or sorry, not the nonmetal, the polyatomic ion, nitrate, exactly as it's written on your table of polyatomic ions. I get all kinds of crazy fabrications of this name on tests and quizzes from students. I'll get things like lithium, nitrogen, oxygen, or lithium, nitrogen, oxide. That's not correct. And like I said, you need to be looking at this NO3 as a polyatomic ion. It's a group of atoms. It has one name. It's a nitrate.